Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Drop. And this is my first impressions look on the brand new Jordan Tatum 4. So this is Jayson Tatum's 4th signature shoe with Jordan brand. And Jayson Tatum's signature shoe line has actually been pretty solid. The 3 I wasn't a huge fan of. The 2 was pretty dang nice, but the traction did pick up a good amount of dust. The 1 was actually pretty nice too, but did pick up a little bit of dust. But as far as like the design goes, the 4 looks absolutely freaking amazing. It looks a little bit like the 3, but just like very much upgraded to me. I don't know why. But yeah, as far as the price goes, it retails for 130 bucks, which is a very good price, especially for the tech that you're getting. But in terms of quality for the upper, I feel like they could have given us a little bit better quality, you know what I mean? But yeah, again, it looks really dope though. So if you guys do want to cop, try to leave in the free link in the description box. But let's get it started right off with the tracciones, right? So we have herringbone, and we have a pod here in the middle of the outsole as well. It's like a translucent rubber, right? Or I guess like semi-translucent. And then around that we have a solid white rubber. So yeah, it's just a different herringbone as far as like the orientation goes, I guess. But they're both using herringbone traction. And as far as the actual traction goes, how does it feel on my wood floors? It doesn't feel too good. Sadly, you know what I mean? Like I got it today and I was walking around in it, and right when I first put it on, I was like, I tried the traction, trying out the bite. I was like, it's not that nice, you know what I mean? Like sometimes, or most of the time, the traction on a shoe that's pretty much brand new or dead stock has really good bites, you know what I mean? But this one, I feel like it's sliding around a little bit, you know? So that kind of, that worries me a little bit. But of course, I haven't played in these yet. So once I break it in and play in it, hopefully it gets a little bit better. But just from my first impressions, the bite doesn't seem that amazing, which kind of sucks, you know what I mean? I feel like Jordan Brand's lacking a little bit for the Tatum line. As far as like all like the Zions also aren't amazing, you know what I mean? But the Jordan, his signature shoe line, the Jordan 40 is absolutely amazing. So whatever rubber compound they use in the 40s, they gotta use in all their other shoes, because right now the Tatum 4 does not feel amazing, right? Also, it seems to be picking up a good amount of dust. The Tatum 3 picked up so much dust, right? And I haven't played in those in a while, and I put those on, and the Tatum 3 was picking out mad dust, you know? It just was not biting, and then once I wiped, it bit a little bit on my wood floors again, but, you know, I guess my floors are pretty dusty, so it just wasn't biting too well. And then the Tatum 4, same thing. It seemed to have a little bit harder of a bite, you know, and seemed to be picking up less dust, or I guess like biting through that dust a little bit better, but still the dust performance doesn't seem like it's gonna be good, right? But again, that's just first impressions. It might all change once I actually play and break it and stuff like that. But right now, I'm a little bit disappointed, right? And as far as the durability goes, also the durability doesn't seem that amazing. I mean, the rubber is a little bit harder than I thought it would be though, because the grooves look pretty thin. So I guess that's good, but because the grooves are on the thinner side of things, it doesn't seem like the most durable, you know what I mean? But I feel like it would be okay. It doesn't feel terrible, but it doesn't feel amazing, right? So I feel like it'll be probably normal for outdoor use in terms of durability. And also this shoe squeaks just a tiny bit. You know, of course, squeak has nothing to do with performance, but if you like to have a nice loud squeak right now, just from my first impressions, it doesn't squeak too much. But again, we'll have to see on how it breaks in. Maybe once I break it in, it might squeak a little bit more. So the traction definitely is a little bit disappointing. And now moving on to the heel to toe transition. Heel to toe transition feels extremely freaking smooth, right? So here in the heel, we have a nice kind of like rounded shape. Although it's not like super curved or anything, it's pretty nicely rounded, right? So that feels kind of nice as far as the overall shape goes here in the heel. And also the actual kind of like midsole is partially exposed, right? You can see in the back of the shoe that it is pretty caged, but then we have this little sliver of foam exposed here on the lateral and medial sides of the shoe, and it does allow for a nice bit of compression. It's actually pretty dang soft, which surprised me. I thought it was gonna be a little bit stiffer, but it's still pretty soft here in the heel, so that feels pretty smooth. And then here in the forefoot, we also have a pretty nice curved shape, so just your standard type of heel to toe transition. But also, look at this. Like, I don't know what it is. I guess they just don't put midfoot shank plates, but also like, we have plastic here, so I guess it's not like a super stiff, or I guess it's not working too well, I don't know, but look at this. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of crazy. You know, and also torsion support, look at this. You know, so this shoe has a very, very nimble, very flexible feel, just like but pretty much every other shoe that Nike has to offer, right? So the Tatum 3 felt the same, the Sabrina 2, the Sabrina 3, the Jaw 2, you know what I mean? So a Luka 4s, the Luka 77. So yeah, if you like that type of feel, where your foot it feels like your foot is doing a little bit more of the work, you know what I mean? As opposed to something that is a little bit stiffer, you know, maybe they have a full length plate or just a midfoot shank plate and it has a little bit of a stiffer feel. But with this type of, you know, shoe and how it feels, it just feels like for me, it's doing a little bit more work, or my foot is doing a little bit more work when I play. But it gives you a little bit more of a freedom of movement, you know what I mean? It doesn't feel as stiff underneath your foot. So if you like that, then I'm sure you'll like the Tatum 4 as far as like how it feels, you know what I mean? So there is a heel to toe transition, extremely smooth. And then moving on to the cushioning setup. So the cushioning setup is actually pretty dang nice so far, right? So they are using Cushionline 3.0, right? We can see that it says Cushionline 3.0 right over here. So it's full length. And also they are using a top-loaded 4-foot zoom unit. So as far as the overall court feel goes, the overall court feel is pretty nice. I would say slightly better than average. The Tatum 3 definitely is lower to the ground, but the Tatum 3 had really bad impact protection for me. It was just a little bit too low to the ground, and the foam and the cushion was a little bit too soft, so my foot would hurt when I was doing like hard impacts, right? But with the Tatum 4, of course, again, I haven't played in these yet, but because the court feel isn't as good and because the foam is a little bit thicker, it feels like the impact protection is going to be a little bit better, right? So when I had the Tatum 3 on, even when I was kind of like compressing the heel a little bit, I can feel my heel touching the ground. But with the Tatum 4, I can't really feel that as much, so that feels way better, right? And also, as far as the insole goes, the insole is just like a regular Ultralight insole. It's like a foam insole, but it does have this kind of like really cool camo on it. And then underneath that, the strobel board is pretty interesting. It's like a cloth material, like a textile material, and it's not like super glued down or anything. And then just pressing it with my finger is actually quite soft, and you can feel the Cushionline 3.0 just like pressing with my finger, but also standing around, it feels pretty dang nice. Again, especially in the heel, there's a nice bit of compression, not super bouncy though. So underneath my heel has a nice compression, and also the outside of the midsole here has a nice bit of compression as well. So that feels really soft, very, very comfortable. It doesn't feel too mushy or anything like that to me so far. So that feels great, right? And then here in the 4-foot, the zoom unit is actually quite large. The surface area of the zoom unit, well, I mean, like when you take out the insole, you can see the actual top-loaded zoom unit a little bit, and it looks like an articulated zoom unit, you know what I mean? So it looks like there's 3 parts to the zoom unit, and it pretty much encompasses the entire 4-foot, pretty much, you know what I mean? So I don't think it's like a super thick or like a super crazy bouncy feel right now. It just feels like a really subtle like thickness, you know what I mean? Like your typical like 9 to 11 millimeter zoom unit thickness, I believe. So it has a nice kind of like bounce, nice little compression as well, which does feel nice. It definitely feels like an improvement so far. I guess the only kind of downgrade is the core feel because it has slightly worse core feel, but again, it still has pretty good core feel. I don't mind it too much, and the underfoot feels really nice in the 4-foot with the zoom unit. Cushion 3.0 in the heel feels nice, and the heel compression. So the cushion actually feels pretty dang nice. I really like how it feels so far, especially if you want like a soft, comfortable, but also pretty responsive setup for the cushion. So there's that.Moving on to the upper. So the upper is where it feels a little bit cheap, you know what I mean? It feels like a synthetic kind of like suede material, and it's just not very, very nice, you know what I mean? And also it says it's using textile, you know, so I'm guessing like the underlaying material, especially with this kind of like gray color, is the textile, and then over that we have that kind of like synthetic suede, right? So it's not the thinnest feeling material, but it doesn't feel thick or bulky at all. And also, honestly, it's like a pretty soft material. Look at this, right? So in hand, it feels a little bit cheap, you know, but on foot, it feels pretty nice. There's no pinching or anything like that. You know, there's no discomfort. It's not uncomfortable. So it conforms to my foot pretty well. It does feel pretty dang supportive, however. It feels way more supportive than Tatum 3. So I really like that. And especially like on top of your foot, you know, it still feels kind of like a little bit more rigid here on top. You know what I mean? And it's also like kind of like softer here on the edges, which is kind of weird. Usually you would want this part to be a little bit stiffer, but either way, it still feels pretty supportive, but also still soft. Like conforms to my foot very well here in the 4-foot. So I don't mind that. But again, if you like to have a very nice quality material, I don't think you'll like the Tatum 4 too much, right? And then here in the midfoot, it's pretty much the same, but it does feel a little bit more glued down. Like if you look underneath the material, you can see the underlaying materials, and you can see that it's a little bit more glued down as well. And then for the tongue, we do have a pretty fine mesh on the bottom of the tongue. There's really not a whole lot of airflow through that though, you know what I mean? Also, we have Jayson Tatum's logo here on top of the tongue as well, and also here in the heel on the outsole, right? And as far as the padding goes for the tongue, not a whole lot of padding, right? So it's just like a very minimal feel, not super thick or anything like that. It's also a half booty construction tongue, giving you a better overall one-to-one fit. And also here on the right shoe, it says Dylan, and then on the left shoe, it says Deuce, right? So Deuce is his son. I'm actually not sure who Dylan is. Maybe he had another son, you know what I mean? But either way, it says Dylan on the right foot and then Deuce on the left foot. And then here in the ankle area, you can see it's the same exact lining material as the tongue. And it's basically just like a mesh material, and it has extremely minimal padding. Like on the sides, very minimal. Like I can't believe how little there is on the sides, right? And then here in the back, there's a little bit more, but still very, very minimal. And also you can see that it does cup in a little bit. So that does add for a little bit more heel lockdown, which of course is good. That's very, very normal. That's very typical usually for most hoop shoes, right? So yeah, it feels pretty standard, you know what I mean? Like the overall kind of like synthetic suede material isn't super minimal and super thin, but again, it doesn't feel thick, so it has a pretty nice minimal, soft, comfortable feel. And then for the tongue and ankle area, it actually has pretty minimal padding as well. So I like how it feels on foot. It's just not the best for quality, right? And moving on to the fit. So I went true to my Nike size, and I went the exact same size that I did with the Tatum 3, and it fits me very, very nicely, right? So there is a tiny bit of length though, just a tiny bit. Like it's not super duper snug, but it's not, I feel like if I went like true to size, it would be a little bit too snug, you know what I mean? Or it might be a very, very tight there, right? So again, true to my Nike size, I'm good to go. I say true to my Nike size as like all my Nike hoop shoes have been fitting a little bit short, so I go up half a size for pretty much all my Nike hoop shoes, and that's pretty much my true to size for Nike, you know what I mean? So if you know what size you are in most Nike hoop shoes, then you should be fine going the exact same size here in the Tatum 4 for your true to size fit. Here in the toe box, I would say it's normal snugness. It's not super snug, but also not super roomy. I can curl my toes up just a tiny bit, but again, like this material, especially on top of my toes right over here, is kind of like rigid, you know what I mean? So it's not a super forgiving material, but it's still soft enough to where it doesn't feel like uncomfortable, you know what I mean? So I do like how that feels like on top of my toes. That feels pretty nice, but again, it's not a super snug fit if you're looking for that. It's just like a normal snugness. And then width wise, it's very similar to the Tatum 3 as well. It's like normal to slightly narrow once you get to the tip of the toe. So again, you should be fine. If you want like a normal snugness, then go true to your Nike size. If you have a wide foot or you want a little bit kind of like roomier fit, then maybe go up half a size from your Nike size. So there is a fit there. Moving on to the support and lockdown. Support and lockdown feels pretty dang good so far. I mean, for lateral containment, you can see the foam coming up just a tiny bit, a little bit. The midsole comes up just a tiny bit, just a little bit, but overall this material feels like it'll be supportive enough, you know what I mean? Also, we have this mesh material here as well in the midfoot. And there is an internal TPU heel counter, however. So lateral containment feels like it'll be pretty good. We'll have to see on how the overall upper feels, you know what I mean? Hopefully my foot doesn't move inside of the shoe too much. Hopefully this has good structural rigidity, but I feel like it'll be pretty good, especially with this type of material. It does feel a little bit glued down as well here in the midfoot. So that feels nice, and there isn't an outrigger, but it does have a pretty nice wide base here in the forefoot. So lateral stability feels like it'll be pretty dang good. No issues with heel lockdown so far. So yeah, overall support and lockdown does feel pretty good. It's just the overall shoe underneath my foot, like the sole of the shoe has just a really nimble and flexible feel, which is kind of weird because the upper has a little bit more of a supportive feel, you know what I mean? Because usually shoes that have this very nimble feel, like the Sabrina 2, Sabrina 3, Jaw 2, you know, Luka 4s, have a really minimal, very soft upper, right? But the Tatum 4 has a little bit more of a rigid material, so it feels a little bit different, you know? But still has, again, that nimble feel for the sole of the shoe. So yeah, there is the support and lockdown. Moving on to the weight of the shoe. So right when I first got the shoe and took it out of the box, I took it out, I was like, this shoe feels extremely freaking lightweight, you know what I mean? So that's a very, very lightweight feel. Let's actually check the actual weight. So it's 11.4 ounces. Let's check the other shoe. It comes in at 11.3 ounces. So that's actually pretty dang light. I feel like Jordan brand is doing very good. You know, Jordan brand is giving us very, very lightweight shoes. Remember when all their shoes used to be extremely heavy, you know? So yeah, the average weight of my shoes is around 12.5 ounces, but recently, you know, due to shoes becoming very light, it's around like 11.5 to 12 ounces. So yeah, 11.3, 11.4 ounces is very, very lightweight. Feels extremely lightweight, and also does feel pretty supportive because of the upper while still having a very flexible and nimble feel, which again is kind of weird to me, but it doesn't feel bad though, you know what I mean? But we'll have to see on the traction. Hopefully if the traction breaks in and gets really good, I will feel very quick, but right now it doesn't feel super responsive. So there is the weight there. Moving on to the aesthetics, I absolutely love how this shoe looks. It looks so freaking good. You know, and the lines that go through the upper come all the way down here into the midsole as well, which I think is a great design. They did the same thing in the Tatum 3, but the Tatum 3 just looked not too good in my personal opinion. So I feel like with the lines and what they did, especially with this kind of like oval shape here in the midfoot, just looks really, really good to me. And also this colorway looks pretty cool too. You know, what is this color? Like a red orange? You know what I mean? Almost like a grapefruit color to me, you know? Very kind of like bright red / orange color, you know? So tell us what you guys think of the aesthetics down in the comment section below. I would even go to say that this is the best looking Tatum, you know, in his entire signature shoe line. So anyways, wrapping things up, it feels pretty nice. I love the cushion. I like how the upper feels, you know what I mean? It's soft, but still like supportive. But the thing I don't like right now is the traction and also the upper quality not being great. But again, it feels pretty nice off it, so I don't mind too much. So yeah, my first impressions, I'm pretty impressed. I like how it feels. It's just we'll have to see on the traction. Hopefully it does break in nicely. So anyways, that about concludes my first impressions look on the Jordan Tatum 4. Again, if you guys do want to cop, I try to leave in the free link in the description box. But that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.